August 15th, 2026. She has spent her entire life just one step removed from the spotlight that follows her royal cousins everywhere they go, and for years, Zara Tindall has been almost fiercely private about what really goes on behind the closed doors of Britain's most watched family. But now, in a series of quiet, unguarded moments that have slowly come to light, the Queen's eldest grandchild has finally opened up about the one member of the family who means more to her than almost anyone else, and the reason will leave you seeing Princess Catherine in a completely different light. For most of the public, Kate Middleton arrived into the royal family as an outsider who married in, a commoner from Berkshire who fell in love with a future king and slowly, carefully, learned to navigate the impossible weight of what it means to become the Princess of Wales. But for Zara Tindall, daughter of Princess Anne, granddaughter of the late Queen Elizabeth II, and a woman who has spent her whole life inside the eye of the royal storm, Catherine was never an outsider at all. She was, from almost the very beginning, family in every sense of the word, and the bond between these two women has quietly become one of the most significant, most protective relationships within the modern House of Windsor. To understand why, you have to go back to a time long before the wedding dresses and the balcony kisses and the global headlines, back to when a young William, freshly grieving the sudden loss of his mother, needed someone who understood what it felt like to grow up inside a family that the entire world was watching. That someone was Zara. Cousins by blood but practically raised like siblings, Zara and William shared something that few people outside the family could ever fully grasp. The strange, disorienting experience of childhood spent under constant public scrutiny, of birthdays and holidays turned into national events, of learning far too young that privacy was a luxury they would rarely be afforded. When Diana died, it was Zara who reportedly tried to pull her cousin back from the edge of that grief, dragging him outside, throwing snowballs, forcing moments of ordinary joy into days that had none left in them. That closeness never faded, and when William eventually brought a serious girlfriend home, it wasn't some distant royal formality that welcomed Kate into the fold. It was Zara, warm and unpretentious, who reportedly made sure the young woman from Berkshire never felt like she was walking into a family that would judge her for where she came from. It's a detail many royal watchers now believe explains something the public has long wondered about. Why, when William and Kate finally became parents, they made the surprising decision to skip over a long list of royal relatives and hand the honor of godmother to Zara instead, the only titled royal among a small, tightly chosen circle of close friends. It wasn't a political move or a nod to protocol. It was, insiders say, a reflection of just how much trust had been built between these two women in the years leading up to that moment. A trust forged not through palace obligation, but through something far more real. And that trust would be tested, and deepened, in ways nobody could have predicted, because in the years since, Catherine's life has been anything but the fairy tale the public imagined from the outside. Behind the poise and the perfectly tailored coats, behind the carefully composed smiles at engagements and state visits, Kate has weathered pressures that would break most people. The relentless scrutiny of the tabloid press dissecting her every outfit and expression, the isolating reality of marrying into an institution that offers very little room for personal vulnerability, and then, in the most devastating chapter of all, a health crisis that shook the entire family to its core. When news broke in early 2024 that the Princess of Wales was undergoing cancer treatment, the palace's carefully controlled statements gave the public only the barest outline of what was actually happening. But inside the family, the reality was far more raw, far more frightening, and it was in those quiet, terrifying months that Zara Tindall's role in Catherine's life reportedly became something far deeper than cousin-in-law or fellow royal. Sources close to the family have described how, away from the cameras, it was Zara who showed up, not with grand gestures or public statements, but with the kind of steady, unglamorous presence that only someone who has lived inside the same strange world could offer. While the world speculated wildly about Kate's condition, filling the silence with conspiracy theories and cruel headlines, those closest to the Wales family say it was the quieter relationships, the ones built over decades of Christmas mornings at Sandringham and shared summers of horse trials and family holidays, that carried Catherine through the hardest days of her life. And perhaps nowhere is that bond more visible than in the next generation, in the unmistakable friendship that has blossomed between Princess Charlotte and Zara's daughter Mia Tindall. What started as a bit of harmless cousin rivalry, a childish back and forth over whose father was more impressive, has, according to royal watchers, evolved into something the family now affectionately calls a friendship for life. The two girls have been spotted together again and again at the events that define royal childhood. Trooping the Color, the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations, the solemn but tender Christmas Day walk to church at Sandringham, where photographers have captured Charlotte and Mia walking hand in hand, heads bent together in conversation, utterly unbothered by the flashing cameras around them. For a family that has spent the last several years absorbing one shock after another, the fallout from Prince Harry and Meghan's departure, King Charles's own cancer diagnosis arriving in eerie parallel with his daughter-in-law's, the mounting scrutiny surrounding other branches of the family, that friendship between the youngest generation has become something the adults reportedly lean on more than they'd ever publicly admit. It mirrors, almost perfectly, the relationship between their mothers, and royal insiders have suggested that watching Charlotte and Mia grow close has brought a rare, uncomplicated joy to both Catherine and Zara during a period when very little else about royal life has felt uncomplicated at all. But what is it exactly that makes Zara so special to Catherine, and to the family as a whole? Those who know her describe a woman who never quite fit the traditional mold of a royal, and that, paradoxically, is precisely why she has become so essential. Zara chose a life built around her own achievements rather than her royal title, becoming an Olympic silver medalist in equestrian eventing and forging a career that had nothing to do with palace patronage or ceremonial duty. She has always spoken with an unfiltered honesty rare among her relatives, unafraid to laugh at herself, unafraid to push back against her more famous cousins when she thinks they need it. That same directness, insiders say, is exactly what Catherine has needed most. Not another voice offering carefully diplomatic reassurance, but someone willing to be blunt, to cut through the noise, to remind her that behind the tiaras and the title, she is still allowed to just be a person having an unbelievably hard time. It's a dynamic that stands in sharp contrast to the far more strained relationships that have defined other corners of the family in recent years, and royal commentators have increasingly pointed to Zara and Mike Tindall's steady, unwavering loyalty to William and Catherine as a kind of quiet, stabilizing force within a family that has, at times, felt like it was fracturing from every direction. As tensions have flared over the years, from the ongoing rift with Harry and Meghan to fresh controversy surrounding other royal relatives, Zara has reportedly made her position clear without ever needing to make a public statement about it at all. Her loyalty, first and always, lies with William and Catherine, the cousins who grew up beside her, who trusted her with the guardianship of their firstborn son, who have leaned on her in ways the public will likely never fully know. And now, as Catherine continues her recovery and slowly steps back into public life with the same quiet resilience that has come to define this chapter of her story, those close to the family say the bond with Zara has only grown stronger, weathered and deepened by everything the last few years have demanded of both women. It's a relationship built not on royal protocol or carefully managed public appearances, but on something the tabloids rarely get right: real, lived-in family closeness, the kind that shows up in hospital waiting rooms and quiet phone calls rather than on palace balconies. And if you're only now starting to understand why Zara Tindall has become such an irreplaceable presence in Catherine's life, the story is only just beginning. Because what happens next, in the months following Catherine's return to full royal duties, reveals even more about just how far this family will go to protect one of their own. If the first chapter of this story revealed the quiet foundation of Zara and Catherine's bond, what happened next inside the walls of Kensington Palace and Anmer Hall reportedly showed just how far that closeness would be tested, and how it would ultimately reshape the way the entire family operates behind the scenes. When Catherine finally stepped back into public duties after her cancer treatment, the world saw a carefully choreographed return, a radiant appearance at Trooping the Color, a warm smile at Wimbledon, a family photo released with just enough polish to reassure a worried public that the Princess of Wales was indeed on the mend. But those images, insiders say, only told a fraction of the story, because recovery from something as devastating as cancer treatment doesn't end the moment the cameras stop rolling. It continues in the quiet, unglamorous hours afterward, in the fatigue that lingers long after a public appearance ends, in the emotional weight of having to perform strength for a nation while privately still finding your footing again. It was in those unseen hours, according to people close to the family, that Zara's presence became less about grand supportive gestures and more about something far simpler and, in some ways, far more valuable: normalcy. Royal watchers have long noted that one of the cruelest aspects of life inside the firm is the way ordinary human experiences, grief, illness, fear, exhaustion, get filtered through a lens of public performance, where even a princess recovering from cancer is expected to smile for cameras and reassure a nation rather than simply be allowed to fall apart. Zara, by virtue of her own chosen distance from full-time royal duty, has never been bound by that same suffocating expectation, and sources suggest that distance is exactly what made her so valuable to Catherine during this period. She could show up not as a royal colleague managing optics, but as a cousin, someone who could sit in a kitchen, pour a cup of tea, talk about the kids' school runs and upcoming horse trials, and let Catherine simply exist as a tired, frightened woman rather than a symbol the country needed to see recovering on schedule. It's a small thing, perhaps, but those who understand the isolating nature of royal life say it's precisely these small things that matter most, and it may explain why, in the months following her diagnosis, Catherine reportedly leaned more heavily on this small circle of trusted family than on the wider apparatus of royal support that technically surrounded her. This dynamic didn't emerge out of nowhere. It was built, brick by brick, over more than a decade of shared family milestones that rarely made headlines but quietly cemented the two women's relationship. Long before the cancer diagnosis, long before the world knew Kate Middleton's name at all, it was Zara who reportedly helped smooth her entry into a family whose internal customs and unspoken rules could be bewildering to an outsider. There's a particular irony in this that royal historians have pointed out again and again. Zara herself grew up with an unusually unconventional relationship to her own royal status. As the daughter of Princess Anne, she was deliberately raised without a royal title at all. Anne famously requested that her children not be styled as prince or princess, wanting them to have something closer to a normal upbringing, insulated just slightly from the suffocating formality that title carries. That decision, made decades before Kate ever entered the picture, arguably shaped Zara into exactly the kind of person who could later serve as a bridge for someone else feeling overwhelmed by the same institution, someone who understood the family's traditions and expectations intimately, but who had never fully been swallowed by them. When Kate arrived as William's girlfriend, then fiancée, then wife, navigating a bewildering set of unwritten rules about protocol, precedence, dress, and public conduct, it was reportedly Zara's practical, unpretentious guidance that helped ease some of that transition, not through official mentorship, but through the informal, almost sisterly kind of friendship that develops between two women who simply liked each other and happened to be tangled up in the same extraordinary family. That groundwork, laid so many years before anyone was watching, is why insiders believe the bond held so firm when it mattered most. And it wasn't only Catherine who benefited from that closeness. By all accounts, the feeling has always been mutual, with Catherine reportedly proving to be one of the steadiest presences in Zara's own life as well, particularly during the periods when Zara herself faced public scrutiny over her sponsorship deals, her family's finances, or the occasional tabloid storm about her more colorful in-laws. Royal commentators have noted that this kind of reciprocity is rare within a family that often functions more like a collection of separate courts than a unified household, each royal figure surrounded by their own staff, their own priorities, their own carefully managed public image. But Zara and Catherine, by choosing to build a relationship that exists largely outside official royal channels, have reportedly managed to sidestep some of that institutional distance, creating something that functions much more like an ordinary, if extraordinarily famous, family friendship. That friendship has only become more visible and more important as the wider royal family has weathered a string of destabilizing controversies in recent years. The continuing fallout from Prince Harry and Meghan's departure has left visible fault lines within the family. Fault lines that have occasionally forced other relatives into uncomfortable positions of having to publicly or privately choose sides. More recently, renewed scrutiny surrounding Prince Andrew and his associations has cast a long shadow over the family's public standing, reigniting old questions about loyalty, image, and who within the family can be trusted to protect its interests rather than damage them further. Through all of it, royal watchers say Zara and her husband Mike Tindall have remained conspicuously, consistently aligned with William and Catherine, not through public statements, which the couple has always avoided, but through the simple, visible fact of where they show up and who they stand beside at the events that matter. It's a loyalty that royal commentators have described as almost old-fashioned in its steadiness, rooted not in political calculation, but in genuine, decades-long affection, and it stands in sharp relief against a family narrative that has, in recent years, too often been defined by rupture rather than closeness. This steadiness has reportedly not gone unnoticed by Catherine herself, who insiders describe as placing enormous value on precisely this kind of unglamorous, unwavering support. Support that doesn't come with conditions or public performance attached. Support that simply exists, quietly, in the background of a life that otherwise feels perpetually on display. It's worth remembering, too, that this closeness extends beyond just the two women at its center, weaving its way naturally into the lives of their children in ways that mirror the very bond that shaped Zara and William's own childhoods decades earlier. Just as Zara once provided William with a sense of shared understanding amid the chaos following his mother's death, her own children, Mia, Lena, and Lucas, have grown up alongside George, Charlotte, and Louis in a way that has given the younger generation something increasingly rare within royal life. Cousins who feel less like distant relatives glimpsed at formal occasions and more like genuine friends, present at the ordinary milestones of childhood as much as the extraordinary ones. Photographs from recent years show the children together not just at Trooping the Color or state funerals, but at the kind of low-key family gatherings that rarely make headlines. Christmas walks, summer holidays, weekend visits to Gatcombe Park, where Zara and Mike have lived for years, just a short distance from the wider family's country estates. That physical closeness, insiders suggest, has mattered more than people realize, allowing a level of casual, everyday contact between the families that simply isn't possible for royals who live at a greater remove. It's this accumulation of small, ordinary moments, not grand declarations, not carefully worded palace statements, but years of shared holidays, quiet support during illness, and children growing up as friends rather than strangers, that has reportedly made Zara Tindall such an irreplaceable figure not just to Catherine, but to the future of the family as a whole. And as the monarchy continues to navigate one of the most turbulent periods in its modern history, with King Charles managing his own health battles and the shadow of past scandals still looming over certain family members, those close to the situation say this particular relationship, quiet, steady, built on decades of unshowy loyalty, may prove to be one of the most important threads holding the family together behind the scenes, even as the public continues to focus on the more dramatic headlines happening elsewhere. What comes next, though, reveals something even more surprising about how deep this loyalty actually runs, and just how far Zara has reportedly been willing to go to protect the woman who was once simply her cousin's girlfriend, and has since become one of the most important people in her life.